We're going to discuss deep meditation, basically the kind that is transcendent of all norms. There are many different practices in the world that can bring you a place of quiet, of calm, but not of divine peace, not of transcendence of the whole world. In other words, you can practice many different forms of concentration where you can learn to be aware of other people, to listen to them, to not react, and that's psychological. That would be like psychotherapy, whatever. But spirituality, when you come to a place of peace, you're involved with the actual God of our universe. So you understand everything. You're never taken in, and you never react. So within a few short years, you'll feel unimaginable ecstasy, joy, happiness, wisdom. You can do anything, and you'll never, never, never let anyone know that you can. Because you'll be quite contrite, quite simple, quite aware. There's nothing you can't do, nothing you don't understand, because once you come to a place of quiet, you're involved with, again, God, which is an infinite personableness. God is a presence. God is infinitely contrite. I use that word infinite because once you transcend the everyday norms in consciousness and you experience God as God is, it has absolutely nothing to do with anything we ever felt. Falling in love, having a child, playing with a child, that kind of innocence is the beginning touch of not even the surface of what our own spiritual consciousness is inclusive of. If we're here in the world today, we incarnated, as it were, by giving up divinity to be in a place that doesn't truly exist. In the East, they call it the Maya, the illusion, in Buddhism. Because it's not really here if you give it nothing. So yes, it requires some years quieting yourself, letting go of reacting to anything, of wanting or needing anything. And that's happiness. It's a different kind of happiness. It's the real you. It's that kind of happiness. It's your happiness. It's your presence. And that's what God gives. God gives God's self to us every moment, forever. Once we transcend the everyday, once we become the awakened one. The Buddha, illumination. There are many different terms for it. The beatific vision, the vision of God. It's quite wonderful to fall back into the hands of the living God. It's not such a big thing to step off from day to day and find some quiet. If you're in the middle of hell, then you're in the middle of hell and you'll find quiet. It's not difficult. In fact, it's quite easy. It's quite simple. Because as soon as you open the door to it, you're it. The point being made is that there actually is a God of eternity. And that you are God's presence in this world, or seeming to be in this world. And every spiritual person, like my teacher here, finally ran into a very spiritual person, my buddy Pedro Mink, and he's a teacher. He doesn't know how spiritual he is because he's just living his life. So he's my teacher. Point is, I had my friend Kathleen 40, 50 years ago, and I just ran into the most contrite, humble, brilliant person I ever met. And so, despite having the experience of illumination, you learn deeper things of an interpersonal spiritual dimension that you can't really imagine is there. There are people like that in our world, but again, they're not in the world or of the world. So when you truly quiet yourself through this practice of meditation, prayer, reflection, contemplation, whatever you want to call it. Always know from the very first moment that God himself will be with us every moment for eternity from that moment on. So we don't, it's not some practice or some book or anything. I know when I first wrote a book, it was just completely spiritual, called it Paradise, and it was just quite spiritual, every word from heaven. And every now and then I want to interject something from the Bible, and what I call the teachers, the angels, or God himself twice within 2 weeks, which is shocking, said, write what you think. You know, you're involved with God, you don't even know you're here. You're so kind, you're so true, you're so deep and ethereal, and no one really gets it. It's quite a miracle to allow ourselves to fall back into the hands of our God. We are God's radiance. We're not less or different than that. So in the world, we're nobody, we're nothing, we don't fight for ourselves. There can be a reason we fight, like my teacher, and it's quite spiritual if you get to the bottom of it. You can enjoy fighting. Because there's a reason, and only you and God know what the reason is. And the first moment you step away and sit, in Buddhism, the moment you sit to be quiet, that's the moment you become the Buddha. You don't have to go somewhere or get to something. That's the moment. You're called the awakened one then. Because you know that that's the quest, that's the cause, that's the reason, that's the place to end all the suffering. It's the end of suffering by understanding. To step away from the entire world, the entire consciousness of this world. There is nothing else. You can have all the baubles, all the beads, the diamonds and gold and pearls, they mean nothing. Refine anything. If you're spiritual, you'll refine your home, it'll look beautiful, whether it's, I remember being in Gandhi's home in India, and it was just this little hovel of a place, and he had one picture up, and of course, but when you walk in, if you know who you are, you're like, the picture was completely straight. You know what I'm saying? It's called feng shui, you can call it, there's a flow about life, and if you keep everything together and in order, then everything works. It doesn't take a whole lot. The less you have, the less you want, the more you'll know. And you can be a curator of a museum and be illumined. I've had two friends that back in the day before it was popular to be a billionaire, had billions of dollars, and they were both quite, my buddy, I don't want to say whoever, and a young lady was like, he was the most intelligent man in the world, and he was known for his wealth and his power and all that, and yet we were completely like two little boys together, two spiritual little boys. He was the most spiritual person I ever met, but no one knew that part of him because they all wanted something from him. The point is, it doesn't matter who the person is, what they have, where they are. I think my friend Krishnamurti in India, he called it conditioning. In other words, it doesn't matter who the person is, what their station in life is, what Carl Jung would call the archetype. In other words, I'm the butcher, I'm the baker, I'm the candlestick maker. You know, it doesn't matter the position. It's the humanity, the spirituality behind the humanity. So I saw my buddy Pedro walk in here one day, my teacher, humbly, and from a great distance, I didn't see a person or a man, I just saw a presence. And so I knew what that meant. Very deep, deep spirituality. So the point is, when you're awakened, everything is different. You understand everything. And you're so humble, it's disgusting. I have to use these words, even use myself, and this is an empowerment where we can understand and communicate on this level. And getting to the point that I'd like to make in this session is that once you're here and you have a teacher, you have a spiritual family around you, things will happen in your life that no one can know, no one will see, because everyone wants their part in this world. But those that are sent of God will join together, and at the end we're going to fold this whole thing up like an old moth-bitten, moth-eaten blanket and put it away. The whole world, it does not need to be. It is the illusion, Maya in Sanskrit. So illumination isn't you sitting off and becoming quiet and becoming happy and you're happy and that's illumination. No. Illumination is when you overcome the entire world. And it's in your hands to do that. As Van Gogh says, your profession is not what you make your money and what you're living by. He said your profession is what you have such passion for that it becomes spiritual in calling. If you ever doubt who Van Gogh was, spiritually, you'll find that quote among so much more in his writings. And it doesn't matter if you're an artist or my buddy who's an astrophysicist, you can become illumined, or if you are spiritual, you've always been spiritual. You've never not been. So the people who aren't spiritual in the world, it doesn't matter when you feel this thing called illumination, enlightenment, it's infinite in scope. You have no interest in the world. You'll drift, you'll walk, you'll float, you'll pass by the everyday, and now and then you'll get a sweet smile from someone, and that's all you'll ever need. That's all you'll ever want. To pet a little puppy, and that'll make your whole day, and you can do a sit home and then figure out the deeper issues, spiritually speaking, of how to heal the whole world. Because that's the job of spirituality. It's not about you being happy. You'll give this illumined experience away all the time. You can't help it. Because you are God's gift. God is an infinite radiance. You are an infinite radiance. The gift is an infinite radiance. It's wonderful. It's you. It's yours. Isn't it yours? Spirituality is not for someone else, or not for someone in the holy books or some great teacher. It's you. And it's simple, and it's human. And it's normal. And it's every day as a little mountain breeze. It's just there. You ever walk up the little hilltop in the summer and all the wildflowers growing? And no one's there. You know what God is. That's the first time you know who you are. The simplicity of spirituality will involve itself in when you sit quietly at home, contritely before God. You'll know that God will be there. You'll feel, again, what I call the teachers, the angels. And it's so sweet and wonderful. And it's deep. You'll do a lot of reading, a lot of studying, a lot of perceiving of all levels. You'll see all the nether worlds, the beings that generate this movie, this little thing of the theater of the world. It's not really here. Every spiritual person knows that. If you're tempted, you want the baubles like anything of this world, you are an absolute fool in eternity. They're what in Tibetan Buddhism they call the hungry ghosts. You want this, you want that, you want what the Joneses have. You want the white picket fence, to this, to that, the other. You don't need it. And you can have that without having it if you're spiritual. Again, my buddy John or others that are quite spiritual in Krishnamurti's terms of conditioning. It doesn't matter what station of life they're in. You can have or not have anything. It's the individual and whatever brought them to that circumstance. And behind that circumstance, the individual's rapport with God, our Father God, and our friend God, and our soul God, and our self God. I'm sure Gandhi talked about rights all the time, but his selflessness was in that experience of nirvana, just selflessness. People look on spiritual people, oh, the saints as weak. No, they're not. They were big. You could never dream how powerful a saint is, many illumined ones. I met illumined people in the East different times, and some that lived in the jungles, and they were so powerful. They were as strong as my teacher almost. Very, very powerful. Just in their little loincloth, and they'd come into the town every 12 years because a guru was going to do something, and fall before him prostrate like that and get up. They wouldn't look at any of the people because the world doesn't exist to a yogi. Yogi meaning union with God. It's a big deal. Nothing else will impress you. But you won't insult anyone. You won't fight anyone. The devil himself will be at you, like the netherworld that projects this. If you become illumined on the way up, you'll see that there are about several thousand of these, what do you call it, dark hooded, like conical shaped things, and they're in kind of a prayer thing for a dark prayer to generate what the world appears to be. That's the reality of it. And you have no sense or feeling about it. And I'm saying it in a light humorous bent right now to say, because you don't have to be afraid of it. It's the statement that the devil fears one righteous person more than 1,000 blind believers. Before we go into these deeper states and some of our basic methods of doing it, I want to set the stage first. That you're going to be involved with the ancient ones, the old ones that are always here. We talked about the ones with the dark within dungeons and the demons, and it's here. That's what projects the image of the world. Socrates called it the images on the wall, or kabuki theater. In other words, it's not really there. It's always trying to get your attention. If you're quiet, you'll look through everything. When I saw my teacher Pedro walk in one day, it was a long time ago, and I looked right through him to God, to heaven. So my point is that it's a spiritual universe. You're a spiritual person. You sit quietly at night, you'll learn all the details, you'll learn the dark side, you don't have to react to it. That means anything. A doctor, a lawyer, again, doesn't matter. No one has power over you. No one in the world has power. No one in the world exists. You are a spiritual light in a darkened age, in a darkened time. And that doesn't exist. Only your spiritual presence. That's what enlightenment is. That's what it entails. Early on, you'll be unimaginably bored around the everyday circumstances. Then you'll learn how to circumnavigate it and lift this one or that one in ways that you can. You're always looking for someone that has a little light in their eyes, and you're going to get behind them, and you're going to give them everything. And it's going to work. It's like Saint one time said that you'll go to heaven upon the elbow of someone you've helped. But this isn't compassion, just helping whoever, the next person down the street and giving them $10. It matters. You can do that, but you'll absolutely know when it's right or when it's wrong. You'll give everything away all of your life, every day. And no one can understand it. You don't understand it because you don't think about it because you're nobody. And that's wonderful. That's sweetness. You are the breeze in the early morning. You are the soft golden haze in the meadow. You're that purplish cloud at night the last rays of sunlight, challenging the night. You're here not to challenge the darkness, but to overcome it. You must know how simple it will be, how brilliant you will become in understanding the ways of the world, the dark forces. It's a wonderful time. It's a time to exist beyond time in this timeless state. In the Revelation it says that there be time no longer. In other words, a sense of time, that the mystery of God should be finished. The power of this is unimaginable. Your life will work in ways that only you yourself can know. Others can't see it, and that's okay. You'll run into a teacher, you'll run into a student, and you'll do your healing, you'll do your daily worship. But your worship there's not a church made of wood or stone, it's from dawn to dawn. It just is. That's what illumination is. There is that condition because there is God. And you are God's direct emanation. Nothing other. You never were. But look what a great spiritual hero you are. If you're spiritual, you gave up divinity to allow all of yourself to be condensed down into like 2 molecules here and to be like everyone else. And you're here long enough to be wrapped up by it, torn by it, ripped by it, beaten by it. And the reason you did that is to understand it. So you can speak the language, you communicate to people and pull them out of the last burning embers, the last burning flames of disbelief and faithlessness. Now you know their language. God can't see the world. We are actually God's senses in the world. The world does not exist, literally, this illusion. I'm going to make another minute being clear about that before we move right into these deep spiritual states. Because you have to understand what it is, or you're tempted. That's why people that go to church, or there's a different causes or different paths to God, and there is no path to God, there's just God. There is nothing else. And we'll go into that in a minute, experientially. So you have to know that there's nothing else. No need, no want, no desire. And that's a happy state. If you're very, very expert at something, like my buddy Gerber here, helping people in every way, it's simple. And it just comes naturally. Imagine how simple it is to be illumined, to be involved with God directly. Everything else disappears. And you can't tell anyone about it. If it would help, you would. And when it does help, you do. But you're not going to make a name for yourself. The people I've met are illumined. You haven't seen them on any site, on anything. They just are illumined. It's a very simple thing. It just is. Thank you for listening. We're going to begin some simple techniques that work. There are thousands of self-enhancement or spiritual enhancement techniques, and they all work. Just employ a few of them in the beginning of your training. In your training, you're retraining your senses to uninvolve your conditioned self with the world. In Tibet, they call it the time machine meditation. Let's do that right off the bat. In other words, there are many, many thousands of spiritual enhancement techniques. This is one. And when you start doing this and you're spiritual, I just feel all my friends from Tibet of many years ago that are always with me from the moment we met many, 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 many years ago. And they're always here. And I can feel them 100,000 years ago or 50,000 years in the future in earth time, but there is no time. It's timeless. It's so wonderful. to know him. And who is he? He gives himself away 24 hours a day in eternity. You become immense, immeasurable. We're going to do the time machine meditation. And this is simply retracing the footsteps of your life to this point of all the conditioning. Like I say, your God's here to be here. You gave up divinity to be here, and now the last 20, 50 years you were conditioned in this world to react to it. And it's good because you learn how to communicate to people who think this is the doctor, that's the lawyer, that's the whoever, that's a street sign. So now we're going to pull all the traumatic experiences down, incidences, by employing the time machine meditation. I'm going to count back. We're going to simplify it, but it's going to work just as well. In fact, a little more directly. Counting back from 100 to 90. At 90, you'll be back just a little bit before your birth. And on the way back, you'll decondition. You'll understand all that you went through in this world up to this moment of illumination. And illumination is always yours. You are God's hero. So at 90, we're going back before birth. We're going to decondition ourselves. The time machine mandala, the time machine meditation. We're turning back the wheels of the clock. And we're just going to be in the illumined condition. That's just the way it is. We're there at 90. If you find someone spiritual in trouble, you can just put your hand on their shoulder. And that's the time machine meditation. You'll take away all of their pain. You have the gift. You are the gift. We're there at 90. $100. Just the breathing. Thank you. $99. There's nothing to do or undo about your spirituality. We're just allowing it to fall back in and through us. And that's what will be forever. Doesn't matter who approves or does not approve. The gift is God himself. You are the gift. You're the message. You're the teaching. You're the illumined one. You're awakened. We remember at 90 as we understand all we've gone through and the tragedy of our life. It's been painful, hasn't it? We've all lived through the same stuff. The devil saw us coming. And our pain is a lot more severe than the average person who complains about this or that or the other. We experience the pain of God. All spiritual people, everyone here knows exactly what was just said. They're trying to take our dignity from us every moment. We get back to the illumined experience and all is well. And this never was. Only the light, only the gift, only the radiant one, the remarkable one, only you. Isn't it you? 95. Thank you. 94. 93. 92. 91. 90. You'll be feeling this presence all day, every day for the rest of eternity. The years will fall from us. They are not us, of us. We are the living light. No one can withstand this. They'll be coming at us around the clock. And as soon as we understand it in 2 or 3 months, we're going to really enjoy being attacked by the devil. Because each time will show us, and some will be horrible, but it will prove to us that this is a dark force that owns this world, that projects it. And that's unimaginable happiness to see that. And then you'll be the illumined one, and you can heal and change and redirect and teach and correct and caress every decent person in the world that's going through the same garbage we've been going through, because you're the awakened one. You're here to end all the madness, all the horror, all the wars, all the illness, because none of it exists in our spiritual consciousness. And we are a spiritual consciousness. We're not waiting for some future date when all the wars and there'll be justice and all the villains will be overcome. It's now. It's an experience in consciousness. Because there's a God. Because you are God's radiance. It's so quiet here. You won't want anything else. You'll sit for hours in your chair at night and close your eyes, and it's 3 hours later or a day later. I've done it for 2 months at a time. What point is, there is this consciousness, and you'll understand all the different times when you've drifted, been out of your body, things have changed and transferred around you, and there's a transference of consciousness. And the point is, God will be with you. You'll understand it. You'll sit down, and I always wrote down a few things on a tablet, and I have dozens of books I wrote that don't matter. There are 2 that I wrote, After Time, an Island of Hearts. They're somewhere out there. And that'll cover all the details of this and all the socio-political climate, how you relate to the whole world, and all the details of how different it is, a spiritual life. And it's you. So you'll sit down, you write a little bit each day, and you'll have your own book in 6 months, 3 months, and it'll all make sense. It's the bad things that happen to us seem to be so intense, but when you step back from that to the time machine meditation, you'll peer right through the middle of it, and you'll see how infinitesimal the pains, the traumas, the slays and arrows of the dark side at us, they'll be like as nothing. All you have to do to overcome it. Anyone here in our gym, here's that we're Pedro's students, whatever, I'll say, well, tell me 3 things that disappoint you today. They'll say, this happened, the car, someone, whatever. And you listen to them, got it without reacting. You stay in your spiritual condition, acknowledge that they said it in a very quiet way, and then say, well, tell me 3 things you're proud of. And they'll say this or that or the other, and you acknowledge it, and they're instantly better. It's that simple. I've listened to many people about everything that happened to them, no matter what it is. If you do that, you're completely aware of them, you have absolute empathy, you're in this illumined state. Nothing can touch you. And early on, like I say, the first few months, it's really coming at you like leaps and bounds, and you're going to love it. Because you'll see that everything being said is the truth. They're just projected images by these beings in the netherworld that are chanting in some dark way. It's a bad movie. Who in this universe could imagine that a God, any God, let alone the real God of the universe, could have created, a 62 Buick or whatever? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's everything about God is beautiful, exemplary, kind, and true, and precious, and dear, and holy. And when you're illumined, like my teacher, it's lighter than air. It's nothing. You don't even think about it. And the sooner we let it go, the sooner we can reach out to our friends and loved ones and meet our mother in the afterlife or whatever, because the afterlife is always here. And you'll find out that the words said today about the world not existing are the God's truth. That you are God's truth. It's not somewhere else, it's not anything else. It's you, this radiance that you are. And when you quiet yourself, using any of these techniques, or simple prayer, contemplation, reflection, whatever it takes, read a holy book, write a holy book, live a holy life like my teacher. You just keep doing the best you can all day, every day, and you're an example. Like my friend Rachel is the kindest person I ever met, and no one really gets it. What it takes to be that kind in this world. There's a depth of courage, remarkable power to be kind in this horrible place. Thank you. We'll employ a couple other techniques just to show which work, and find a few that work. Do them daily for 2 or 3 months, and you won't need to do anything after that. This is all very simple. There is God. You are God's hero. You're in the world. You gave your life to be here. Now you understand what the world is. Uninvolve yourself. Just sit quietly with God, and always, always, always expect God to be there. To try to tell someone, sit quietly and watch your thoughts, it's bizarre. That's cruelty. But to have the gift, like my teacher does, or anyone in this room, just touch someone on the shoulder and you're there. Because you are the gift. It's not ego, it's not anything. You have to, the world, the devil's PR man, you have to give something up to be spiritual. You don't have to give anything up. You'll be unimaginably powerful. You'll be very, very, very humble about it. You'll never, never tell anyone. Because you're living in eternity already. And everyone they're either beautiful children or they're lost. And the ones that are lost are not really here. It is an illusion. Let's try one of those techniques. We'll call it a recall list. And you can use any terms or recall anything of beauty, of dignity, of spiritual power, or presence, or skill. Let's see. Recall a time you felt a profound oneness with nature. Thank you. Recall a time somehow everything turned out as you had expected. Thank you. Recall a time you loved someone more than you love yourself. Thank you. Recall a time you did something ordinary in an artistic manner. Thank you. Recall a time you were in perfect communication with another person. Thank you. Recall a time you were refreshed by water. Thank you. You see how it closes the mind down? You just have to acknowledge it. So when I said about listening to someone, acknowledging, meditation is a process of sitting quietly and whatever image or thoughts or senses or door slamming outside, whatever comes, just without reacting to it, got it, got it, got it. Someone fires a gun, got it. I mean that literally. You'll be in a place where you can be not in a place. It's called illumination, nirvana, God consciousness. Most of all, it's called you. Thank you. Thank you very much for listening. There is a God. You are God's presence. Don't let anyone tell you any different. Sit quietly at night. You'll always be in the arms of our Father God. You're a powerful being to be in this world at this time. If you're spiritual, you're here to end the whole thing. Isn't that wonderful? God bless your mission. Thank you.